What's up, everybody? Welcome back, Correlation Nation. I know it's been a while, but I can assure you the work's coming along nicely. I'm getting to a point where I'm not doing, 11 full fights or 10 full fights every week because, these cards are usually anywhere from 11 to 15, 16 fights, usually 11 to 13, but nonetheless, I spend countless hours every week going over fights, and so I'm finally to a point where the database is coming along pretty nicely, and I don't have so many fights to go over. So I'm hoping that soon I can get back to making videos and really trying to give you the best predictions I possibly can. But I wanted to start this week because we have a really fun card. We're going back to Mexico City, and a lot of great fights, a lot of great talent, a lot of great prospects, fighters people may not really know who they are. But anyways, I really want to get into this so we can talk about it, and let's go ahead and get into this. I'm not sure why that's on there, but let's hop into this. So, like I said, Mexico City. We're going to start at the bottom of the card and work our way to the top. So we'll start with the prelims. First fight of the night, at least by Tapology report right now. We have Wes Schultz going against Damian Pinas. And this is a pretty fun scrap. Two guys coming off Contender Series. Wes Schultz, I think he fought on it twice. And Pinas came on. This guy hasn't really lost. Maybe he hasn't fought the greatest level of competition, but, he's fought some reasonably well guys. And, seems to be a legit striking threat. And then Wes is, a little more of a wrestler. But let's hop into the breakdowns of these guys. I'll pull up Wes Schultz, first guy we have right here. Let's see if I can get this out of the way. This is what I have on him. Fairly light-footed striker, shows some bounce with a bit of footwork, somewhat measured pressure, can be a bit reckless. Backside leg, which is his right typically, is probably his best distance weapon. Decent 1-2, bit slow on the return, so he doesn't really get his hands and his guard back to defend properly, but and he can be a bit chaotic, which is also a part of the reason he doesn't get his hands back. He might, go into like a twirling spinning back fist or something silly. Wrestling seems pretty fair, and I mean that in a positive way. It's not like it's pretty good. Transitions pretty well, nice scrambling, aggressive grappler. He has pretty good ground and pound and from top position. So all in all, I think he's pretty good. I think the chaoticness or him not getting his hands back is going to make him susceptible to getting knocked out. He does seem to be pretty tough, but, definitely makes you a liability. So, I want to at least acknowledge that. And then when we go to the other side, we're going to be looking at Damian Pinas. Let's pull him up, see what we can... Pinas. Alright, this guy... fairly light-footed striker, shows decent bounce with solid-ish footwork. He does use measured pressure, but he is kind of willing to stand behind his guard and look for counters. Solid backside low kick, nice left jab. He throws a heavy right cross and hook. Seems to have pretty average speed, but nice power. I don't really trust his takedown defense, but seems to scramble fairly well and threaten submissions. And, ultimately, he doesn't really give up on himself. So I think his ground game is still a bit of a question, especially considering the level of competition he's faced. But, he's a good athlete. He's really long. The footwork, the striking is all really nice. So I think he has a pretty good base fundamentally. And could definitely look to see him grow. But I think that, he's going to have to develop more of a grappling skill. No, I mean, he doesn't really have to develop the grappling skill set, but you know what I mean? Like, season a bit, make sure you can defend the takedowns. We have to see what he's going to do in those positions, which is kind of up in the air. We don't really know right now. I do kind of favor him in this fight. I favor his skill set, but it truly is kind of a 50-50 fight. It's tell two tapes. striker versus grappler. I think West is susceptible being countered. Therefore, I do favor Pinas. But I could see, West Schultz putting Pinas in positions he's never been in and ultimately either getting a decision victory or a finish at the same time. So it's a pretty volatile fight all in all. I'll favor Pinas, but West Schultz could definitely get a submission or something like that. So, it is what it is. We'll move on. And I will mention that Schultz looked pretty good at the weigh-ins, like sizing up to Pinas. The size was pretty fair. He might have even looked a little bit bigger, so that was good. That following fight, we're gonna have Eric Silva going against Francis Marshall. It's a pretty fun fight. Eric Silva's a little bit older, hasn't fought in a while. I'm gonna say probably 7, 8 out of 10 times Francis Marshall wins this fight, in my opinion. But let's hop into the breakdowns. We'll look at Eric Silva first. Silva. Okie dokie, here he is. Fairly light-footed striker, shows pretty good bounce with decent footwork. Does tend to plant quite a bit. He's a pressure fighter that seems to be pretty aggressive. Can be chaotic. Has pretty nice backside, low and front kicks. They're pretty heavy. Decent 1-2, tends to lunge a bit. Carries his hands low, pretty competent offense and defensive wrestler. He scrambles pretty well, but can get caught in transitions. And then on the other side of this, we have Francis Marshall. All right, Francis Marshall. Light-footed striker, shows pretty good bounce with solid-ish footwork. Seems to be pretty measured. Carries a pretty good guard. Solid backside kicks with a fairly active lead late. Boxing combinations look pretty sophisticated. Will mix in wrestling, has some takedown ability. Seems to scramble pretty well on the mat and will take a submission if presented. So I think that he's just a fresher, younger fighter, a little bit more skilled, a little bit more talented. Like I said, he probably wins it 7 or 8 times out of 10. So I'm going to favor him. He could get a finish, but, the thing that I like to look at, you're going to see people saying that he's going to get a finish, and it's quite possible because I do think he's the better fighter. But Eric Silva is not really I guess he's only had 2 actual UFC fights, and he technically got finished in both of them, but going third round, TJ Brown wasn't ever going to be a champion, but he wasn't terrible, but he's a pretty good wrestler. I think styles make matchups, so wrestle. TJ just got the better of him in the round 3, and then the Muhammad Naimov, the leg injury. I don't know. I actually don't really recall that fight, but leg injury. And then he's at a significant amount of time off. So I don't think he's a terrible fighter, but I definitely favor Marshall in this fight. Like I said, probably by decision, but could definitely get a finish as well. So I would never count that out of the realm of possibilities. And then let's go ahead and move on. The following fight we're going to be looking at. Oh, this is fun. This is a really fun fight that I want to talk about quite a bit. We have Ernesta going against Regina, Tarin, and Tarin's stepping out on pretty short notice. I don't know, a couple days notice, 4 or 5 days potentially. And she's never fought in the UFC. She's a pretty young girl, blown up, 21 years old. Has pretty good length. Karate, she's huge. 5'9", 71 inch reach. And then Tarin, you have 5'7", 66-inch reach. So there's a 5-inch reach advantage on the Karate side. But to be honest with you, I still see Regina as the more effective striker. I think Karate has really good movement, lots of feints, kind of erratic movement really, but nonetheless she moves quite a bit and she puts out pretty good pace and volume. But I think that Tarin is going to be the more effective, more dynamic, more powerful, more aggressive, more. Um, I just think she's the better fighter. Well, I think it's a good fight, and I think Karate is definitely more imposing, but physically, but mentally, or like the mentality of Tarin is much nastier than Karate. Tarin will go out there and be a dog. She's got an aura where I really truly believe that she probably wins this fight. Now it's important that we go to the breakdown of these two because I was really wanting to talk about it. Let's check it out. Ernesta. Ernesta is a light-footed striker. Shows good bounce with some footwork. She's long for the division, but doesn't have very good range management. She's a bit frantic, lots of movement. She has a decent left jab, right cross, likes to lead with the two, decent backside front and high kick, step in knee, some knees in the clinch. Can get stuck on her back, however. And then we'll go to Tarin. When we go to Tarin, we got fairly light-footed striker, shows decent bounce with solidish footwork. She uses measured pressure with decent range management. Actively leg, she will throw the right like low and front kick, and then she has a decent guard, long punches. She's in or out. I think she has range weapons or dirty clinch strikes. And I think this girl might be a future star. She goes by Kill Bill, and I think she will kill. She's a girl that, like I said, she's aggressive, but she's not overly aggressive in the sense that like she's not chaotic. She's not like, it's very measured aggression, and she has a nastiness to her. She's young, got good length, and I think she has potential to really grow. I think people will like her. I'm really, really excited. I can't believe that she's stepping in on the late notice. I don't know if she was a girl that was going to be coming in on like Contender Series. All I know, she looks like the real deal. I really like her, and I'm gonna take her to win. I think she's a plus 150. You can money line that. Her by TKO is like plus 700. Really like that. I'm not sure that she gets the knockout per se, or even that she gets the win, but I do like her. I think there's a lot of value on her, so I'll be looking her way and keep your eye on her. Yeah, it looks like she was supposed to be on Contender Series this past September. Ended up not being. I'm not sure why, but nonetheless, we get an opportunity to see her now. She looks really, really good. So exciting fight. And let's move on. Next, we have Douglas Silva de Andrade going against Javier Reyes. I don't even know if that's his name because I see it different in different areas, but is what it is. Let's see. This is a fun fight. Both guys are pretty seasoned. I think both of them are pretty skilled. It's a volatile fight, to be honest with you, because of Andrade. The guy is kill or be killed mostly. He can definitely win a decision. Beat Cody Stamen, win decision with Miles John, Nurmagomedov. He's a good fighter. I favor the technical striking and length of Javier in this fight, but let's not sit here and pretend like Douglas hasn't fought a bunch of killers in the past. 20 knockouts, only one knockout loss. Only 2 submissions, but only 1 submission loss. He's 7-4 to the decision. He's a real seasoned guy, true vet. Still looks to be in phenomenal shape, even at like 4 years old. But again, I do favor the technical striking and the length of Javier Reyes. Let's pull up their breakdowns real quick so you can get a better idea of why I feel the way I do about these 2 gentlemen. Let's see, Silva. Douglas Silva is fairly light-footed striker. He shows some bounce with decent footwork. Seems fairly measured. He carries a solid guard, loose boxing, feints the left jab to set up a heavy overhand right. He has a nice, powerful leg kick. Kicks and solid backside low inside kicks. He's a capable grappler that will scramble and defend offensively, aggressively. So more like he'll use his grappling jiu-jitsu and threaten submissions to defend. That's just kind of how he operates. But, as his record shows, not a ton of submission wins. But he doesn't get submitted either. So, that's just kind of who he is. And then on the other side of him, he's going to be going against Javier. Javier Reyes, this guy, fairly light-footed striker. He shows decent bounce, but tends to be pretty grounded with good footwork. He carries his hands pretty low. He has a decent left jab, solid teep. He can be a bit low volume at range. Does have some takedown ability. Not sure if it's very good. Seems to have pretty nice ground game. Scrambles and transitions well. He has a good back take. Uses nice ground and pound and aggressive rear naked choke series. So, obviously you're getting a lot out of him. He's a skilled fighter, like I said, very seasoned. He's new to the UFC, fought in Contender Series. And it shows, one of the things that I want to point out about these 2 guys is, let me go back. When you look at these guys on paper, you'll see right away 40 to 32. Last weight 136 to 145. And they're fighting at 145. So that's another thing. Silva has gone up in weight, which I didn't even know. Pretty reasonable size difference, nice reach, and the height it didn't seem to be close at all. You guys seen these guys size up. Javier was significantly bigger in my opinion. That's the way it seemed to me. And I already naturally kind of favored his skill set because I think he's a little bit more technical striking, and he's pretty well versed on the ground. Him holding his, like, there's a world he can get knocked out for sure. There's a great line on the Silva side. KO is like plus 500, and honestly I think there's value in that, but I do, like I said, I do favor the other side, but I think his path to victory is probably a KO. And anyways, that's how I feel about it. Let's move on. The next fight we are going to be looking at Cristian Quinonez going against Moutinho. It's kind of a dog fight. Maybe not the most technical skilled fight in the world, but it is a bit of a dog fight. Moutinho, he's a pretty solid all around fighter. Not really spectacular in any one particular area, but I'd say mostly pretty well versed, pretty tough, good pace, good cardio. And Cristian Quinonez, kind of the same thing, tough guy, push pace. I feel like he doesn't really trust his striking, but he will definitely look to, grapple you up, try to get you in a position where he can either ground and pound you or get a dominant position, look for a submission. Let's pull him up. Cristian Quinonez, light-footed striker, shows good bounce with solid footwork. He seems pretty measured on the feet. Doesn't seem to trust his hands in striking, or he doesn't seem to trust his striking. He has a fairly aggressive wrestling style. He will chain, fights with great pace, and relies on a squirrely scrambling and hard to beat his opponents. And then the other Kris with a K. Kris with a K. Kris Moutinho, flat-footed pressure striker, solid kicks at range. Left inside low kick, side kick, and then he'll use his right leg as a front kick. He has loose boxing. He likes to throw a lead right hook. Decent left cross, uneducated guard. High at range, but tends to reach and drop his hands in the pocket while trying to extend combinations. Decent cage push, dirty boxing and elbows. Solid durability and conditioning. So, like I said, just a bit of it all. And I think it could go either way, but I'm going to favor the hometown kid. I think Quinonez can just kind of outdog, outgrit, get him to the ground, and, maybe get some stuff off. I'd like to see him face off again. Look at the size. Because I feel like Quinonez is pretty big for the division. But he's only got a 1-inch reach, or 2-inch reach, and a 1-inch height advantage. But I don't know, I just feel like he seems kind of big. So, minus 650, I don't know that I love that. That's really, really juiced. I think it's a closer fight than that. But, yeah, I favor Cristian Quinonez. And then we have Macy Chiasson going against Ailin Perez. This is one of the toughest fights on the card to try to predict, in my opinion. But we'll do our best, and let's go ahead and hop into these two. Macy. Sorry. Macy Chiasson is a pretty well-rounded fighter. She has solid boxing, long straight punches. She will switch stances, move laterally. She carries her hands a bit low, can be a bit flat-footed at times. Snappy low kick, seems to have good positional strength. Solid wrestling, she's tenacious. Decent control, she floats on top, can be taken down but works to get up. So my notes on her are a bit old and they need to be updated because I've changed my process, but mostly I have a pretty good idea of how she fights. My question is what Macy shows up, because her last couple fights, she doesn't seem the same. She hasn't showed that same tenacious wrestling or get up ability, or she's just been a little bit more complacent, in my opinion, and it's cost her big time. Now, somebody pointed out the fact that in her last two fights, she had gone down, down in weight because they got rid of the 145. So they are fighting at 135. She come in overweight. I was not aware of that. Maybe that was the last fight. I'll have to check. But definitely a big size, huge size, 6-inch height advantage, 6-inch reach advantage, and age shouldn't really be too much of a factor here. I would tend to think that Ailin Perez might be a little bit more athletic overall. Macy, like I said, has a size advantage, but pure athleticism, I think Ailin might have a slight edge, quickness, and just overall, like her footwork, bounce, stuff like that. But let's see. Let's pull them up. Ailin. Ailin Perez is a light-footed striker. Shows good bounce with decent footwork. Seems pretty measured on the feet. will switch stances a bit, likes to throw her left leg from the backside, and she'll throw it high. Carries a high guard, throws basic boxing combinations, will look for takedowns persistently, but doesn't seem to overexert herself if it isn't there. She scrambles and advances pretty well on the mat. Good top pressure. So, like I said, it's a tough fight to call. I think it could go either way. Macy Chiasson has the ability to win the fight, but and she has some advantages that she could use to win the fight, but you're only as good as it's like what have you done for me lately? You know what I mean? You're only as good as your last fight. So they say. What I'm concerned about is the output, mostly. And I think there's a world she's gonna close the distance. She's gonna probably eventually get to this ground, and she's either gonna just control the fight and win that way, or eventually get a stoppage. But like I said, you have to understand Macy has the ability to win this fight, and it's hard to be certain of Ailin. So it's tough. It's a really, really tough one. But I will favor Ailin. I think that she's the hot fighter. She's the one that's been winning, and yeah, I just can't bet against her at this point, and I really can't bet on Macy showing up. And so for those reasons, I'll favor Ailin Perez ever so slightly, but it's a tough one to call. So do what you will with that. Be interesting to see, and then I'll need to update my Macy Chiasson this time. I'm not leaving it as it is. I'm gonna make sure that I update that as that fight happens. But anywho, next fight we have Jose Medina going against Ryan Gandra, and this is a kind of interesting fight in my opinion. You got Ryan Gandra coming off Contender Series. I guess he looked good, you could say, but in my personal opinion, no, I didn't rate him very highly. I didn't really come out of that fight feeling like, he's so much better than I originally thought, or anything like that. I mean, it's funny because there was a couple guys on that episode specifically that I thought that episode wasn't very good. The fighters weren't very good, and a couple went out and got pretty spectacular finishes, and it looked great, and they got signed and all that. But like I said, ultimately, I didn't really walk away from that show feeling like any of those fighters were really much better than what I thought they were to begin with, and he was one of them. So maybe he's better than I think. And Jose Medina, just quite frankly and honestly, he's not a very spectacular fighter himself. More of a punching bag mostly, but he has cardio and he has grit and he has durability. He has a lot of tangibles that you can't train. You know what I mean? So, anyways, let's pull these guys up. Medina. Medina. Jose Medina. So the note on this guy needs updated as well, but again, you can't really blame me. He's a flat-footed striker. He has a hard time getting out of the way of being hit. Toughness and durability is about the only way this guy's going to win. And that's all I got. I know it's very, very little, and it doesn't say much, but to be honest, it's kind of hard to really put much about him because he doesn't do much. But he has shown the ability to get wins on the regional level. They had knockouts. Most of them were knockouts, so I'll just kind of mention that here, and then we're going to move on to Gandra. Ryan Gandra. Fairly light-footed striker. He does show a bit of bounce or shows decent bounce with measured pressure. Does tend to be a bit plotty. Doesn't see much technique in his striking. He blitzes forward with wild looping hooks. Volume looks good in spurts. Takedown ability doesn't look very good. But he does tend to find himself on top with a bit of ground and pound. And some control. We'll look for an arm triangle from top position. Fades after first, but fights through. So, this is interesting. I think this fight kind of goes one of two ways. I think that Gandra more than likely isn't going to knock out our boy Jose Punching Bag Medina. And I think that he'll gas out, especially at altitude. So there's a real possibility Medina could win this fight, even by KO, possibly. He's a plus 500 money line, plus 900 TKO. That's a real opportunity. And then the other thing I'll look at is that Ryan Gandra arm triangle. I'm not sure what the line on that is. But I think that he's more likely to submit Medina than knock him out. So that's the way I would look at this fight. I'm not betting on Gandra at the price tag they have him at. It just, there's no way. I don't even trust him to begin with. I think, you sell low on this dude or whatever, sell high. I don't even know. People think highly of him. No. He is Jose Medina, basically, in my opinion, but maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. But I'm going to move on. Next fight, we have Santiago Luna going against Angel Pacheco. Pretty fun fight. Kind of I think, it's home cooking is what it is, but, Angel Pacheco brings some real... he's a competitor, you know what I mean? Nonetheless, he's a pretty well-rounded fighter. Santiago Luna is... I think his striking skill set's a bit undeveloped, so he has some work to do there. But his wrestling ability, his body lock throws, and different things he does like that, pretty high level. And he's aggressive. He'll grapple. He'll ground and pound moderately. He'll stay active, and usually he's able to get guys out. But you have to take into account that the guys in the the level of competition hasn't been supremely great, but he looks like a legit prospect. Mostly, he just needs to refine or continue to develop his striking skill set. But I think his wrestling and grappling and just overall skill set mostly is pretty top tier. And then when you look at Angel Pacheco, he's a guy that he's a guy again, tough, durable. Good pace, good pressure, or like good output, good cardio. Is able to just stay in your face and kind of keep fighting the whole time and make you fight back. So he can win. He mixes up his combinations fairly well. And that's what he does. So let's pull these guys up. Luna. Alright, Santiago Luna, this guy. Slightly light-footed pressure striker. He shows some balance, but tends to be pretty plotty. Boxing is loose, carries a high guard. He keeps his head right on the center line, which I don't like. Pretty aggressive, closing the gap. Legit wrestling ability, really nice body lock throws. Questions around his control, but does seem to float okay and use moderate ground and pound. So that's just kind of what I think. On him. And when you look at his opponent, Angel Pacheco, let's see what we got on him. Angel is a fairly light-footed striker. He shows decent bounce and footwork. Seems fairly measured, but does stay active. He carries a decent guard. Boxing is solid-ish. Combinations aren't very crisp, but he does mix up his targets well with solid volume. He offers some head movement, but it's not very reactionary. It's more like he'll try to move as he enters the pocket versus, moving to dodge. Cardio seems solid. Ground game is a bit of a question. So, that's what we're looking at. Like I said, bit of a dogfight. Angel's definitely got a puncher's chance in this fight. He could definitely just, if he's able to keep it standing or able to defend a couple or work up a couple times and make Santiago really work for those takedowns, keep it on the feet. Yeah, there's a world Pacheco wins his fight, but I do believe that Santiago's ability to close the gap and get these body lock tosses and throws and what have you is going to be the difference in this fight and his conditioning. So I do think that's what happens, but it's, we'll find out. We're going to move on. Sorry, a little tired. Next fight we have Imanol Rodriguez going against Kevin Borjas, and this is a really fun fight. Imanol's a guy that fought on Ultimate Fighter. I didn't watch it, but he lost a split decision to the guy that ultimately won the Ultimate Fighter. And man, he looks like a really good prospect. Just to be honest with you, going against Kevin Borjas, tap all the jazz him at 39. Dude's pretty legit. He's a pretty good striker. We're gonna hop into it, and see what we think. Imanol. All right, Imanol Rodriguez. This guy is a fairly light-footed striker. He shows good balance with solid footwork. Carries a high guard, solid keep at range, has nice combinations in the pocket, fast hands, likes to throw the 4 and the 6, backside uppercut or hook, has good power and will swarm hurt opponents. Has legit takedown ability, has a hip toss, explosive level changes, will let opponents back up. And if he's taken down, he has a urgent get up game. So, there's a lot of things I like about him. He looks like he's a little bit smaller maybe, but so I'm not sure if he's undersized for the division, but he has really good athleticism, good power, good speed, really technical boxing combinations, good footwork. Like there's not much not to like about him, but you never know. The holes can pop up. You can see things. They can be put into positions that you haven't seen before. I mean, he hasn't lost, so it's hard to see his holes at this point. But all in all, when I look at him and look at his skill set, look at what he's good at, and what it requires to be, a pretty good fighter, I think that, he's checks a lot of boxes, and I think that, he's a legit prospect. I really do. I think he's a legit prospect. I was pretty amazed at his skill set and talent and what have you whenever I originally taped him. So I do think he's good. And then when we look on the other side of him, we have Kevin Borjas. So Kevin's a guy that is a fairly light-footed striker. He has some bounce, but tends to plant his feet looking to counter. He has clean 1-2, nasty overhand right counter, fast hand, nice step and knee. Plus minus is he will follow his opponents to the ground. But he does have some good ground and pound, but questionable grappling defense. Yeah, it's hard for me not to favor Imanol in this fight, but I want to see if he has any, does he have submission wins? I'm just curious if it goes to the ground. I guess he has one. I mean, one of some fights is not enough for me to want to chase any type of submission. But, and I don't think he's gonna submit Kevin Borjas anyways. But so I favor Imanol Rodriguez. I think that he's the more technical striker. I think he'll put a little bit. I think they're both really good strikers, but I think that he'll put out a little bit more, and they'll just look a little more effective. Do a little bit more, and but you never know. I mean, Borjas could, I think, catch anyone. So it'll be a fun fight to watch for sure. But I favor Imanol. Most likely, it's by decision. I think you can get a pretty good line on the fight goes to decision. You could probably get a pretty wild line on a split decision. And then outside of that, I kind of like Imanol like round 1, round 2. But I don't know him knocking out Borjas is like super, super likely. I think it's possible. I think he could finish him. I just don't know if he will. So, because Borjas is a pretty tough customer. So, anywho, Imanol for the win, money line, whatever. Moving on. Onto the like main event, we got Edgar Chairez going against Felipe Bunes, and fun fight. Edgar Chairez is a guy that kind of reminds me of, I think it was last week or whatever, the week before. I was talking about Milky Costa. I'm like, yo, this guy is got a great skill set. I mean, he's obviously just coming to the UFC. He's had, a handful of fights or whatever now in the past year and a half, 2 years or whatever it's been. And actually, I don't think he came in on Contender Series. I think he came in on a late notice fight. But either way, Milky's a legit guy. When you watch him, you're like, man, this guy's got a great frame, great skill set. He's got a long, rangy skill set. Kicks, front kicks, long punches, grapples at a high level. Scrambles, transitions. There's so many things. He has good power. So many things I like about him. And when I look at Edgar Chairez, I see some of these same things. I see these guys, and I'm like, maybe there's times they've made mistakes or whatever, but they have great potential. Edgar Chairez is a guy that has good length for the division. He has good speed for the division. He has good strength for the division. He has a really, really good striking skill set. Maybe defensively it's not always great, but he's a tough customer. He'll stand in the pocket, and he can take one and give one. You know what I mean? Not that you want that always, but he's capable of doing it, and that's also something that you need to be able to do. Yeah, obviously, not getting hit is the goal, but when it happens, you better be able to take it, because you could be like Phil Hawes. You can be talented, and if your chin is dust and it just can't withstand being punched, then you don't have nothing, right? So anywho, Edgar Chairez is a guy that I tend to like quite a bit. I like his just like natural fighting spirit, like you can see it. But anywho, Felipe Bunes, another guy, extremely dangerous guy, but he's a bit of a gasser. So let's hop into this. Edgar. All right, Edgar Chairez. This guy is a light-footed striker. He shows solid bounce and footwork. Pretty bladed stance. He seems to be pretty measured, fair range management. He has a nice guard, crisp hands, nice left jab, good length with speed and power. Heavy backside, low kick, fairly active lead leg. He'll throw it low, high, and front. Very capable grappler. He scrambles well. Opportunistic submissions. Can be outclassed. And so I guess that's a possibility, but he's a dog, the guy won't quit on himself, and that's what I'm saying. I just love this guy's fighting spirit. And that lapse in grappling defense or whatever might be one of his chinks in his armor, but all in all, he's still a really good fighter. And then when you look at the other side, Bunes, this guy, I have that he's a fairly light-footed striker. He has decent footwork, but he tends to fade. And what I mean by that is like after a round and a half, and he starts to fade. His footwork, like he goes from having pretty decent footwork, moving around, good, pretty decent movement to, what happened. Has pretty nice kicks at range. Tends to throw wide power punches. Nice reactionary knees. Decent takedown defense. Very active guard, and he will use that to get up. So I favor Edgar Chairez. I think that he probably finishes this fight. In any point, first, second, third round. I think him finishing the fight is the most likely scenario. But you can get this fight doesn't go or doesn't start round three fight doesn't finish or doesn't start round three. I think you can get pretty good lines on those, and that's kind of the way I look at it. But yeah, Edgar Chairez finish more than likely in my opinion. And then moving on, we got Daniel Zellhuber going against King Green, and I'm not really sure. This is just an opportunity to get Zellhuber a win, or I'm not really sure. I think Zellhuber's a great fighter. I mean, this dude's really got all the ability in the world, and Zellhuber's his biggest enemy. You know what I mean? Just to be quite honest with you, because his issue is not talent, it's not skill, it's not his frame. It's literally just his fighting mentality. It's like he's so technical that the fighting spirit's maybe not. I don't know. It's just too pretty. He fights too pretty, and sometimes he admires his own work too much. Doesn't do enough. I think that's his problem. Um, but he is a dog. He doesn't quit. He's got a chin on him. He's really really super long for the division. There's tons of things to like about this guy. And then King Green carries his hands low. I mean, he's the opposite of Zellhuber, where he has some striking ability and whatnot, obviously, but fundamentally it's kind of atrocious. It's a mess, but it works. He makes it work. He's got reasonably good head movement and quick hands, and his punches come from weird angles. And anyways, let's hop into it. Zellhuber. All right, Zellhuber. This guy, fairly light-footed striker. He has solid footwork, pretty good lateral movement, and maintains range pretty well. He's a technical striker. He fights behind a good left jab, right cross, has a wide array of kicks as well. Tendency to drop his hands moving back. He has decent Muay Thai clinch, good knees, decent takedown defense, solid sprawl, with some takedown ability of his own. Solid defensive grappler with submission upside. Durable, good cardio. Yeah, tons of stuff to like about him. Like I said, he's honestly his own worst enemy. And let's look at Green. All right. He's a fairly light-footed, athletic, but tends to stand at times. Fights with hands by his hips, leaves chin exposed, solid kicks at range, push kick to thigh, and mid low kick. Fast hands, straight punches, counters well, can get buzzed, has some offensive grappling, but can get outward. And I think it's a striking match, but I guess if Zellhuber is maximizing his range advantage, there's a world that Green could look to implement some grappling, but he's primarily a striker too, so I don't know that that's going to happen. It'd be an interesting fight because I think Zellhuber wins this generally, but he has to want to win it. He has to try to win it. So if I know he's going to show up to fight, I'm going to pick him, but it's tough. We're going to move on. Yeah, most likely him by decision, but I could see him getting a knockout too. You get decisions like plus 125, KO's like plus 160 maybe. But yeah, Giselle Huber money line is probably the safest way, but even that's not super safe. And we're going to move on. We got Marlon Vera going against David Martinez. This is another fight that I just absolutely have to talk about. I've been saying it since Contender Series. David Martinez. He's got a medal potential, you know what I mean? Dude's a champion. championship caliber fighter, in my opinion. People might not understand just how good this guy is yet, honestly. But nonetheless, Marlon Vera is a pretty tough fighter himself. A lot of great technical ability, good frame, good power. But he does have some issues. So let's hop into Vera. Marlon Vera. All right, guy's a fairly light-footed striker. Shows decent bounce with solid footwork. He does tend to be a bit grounded. He uses measured pressure, maybe too measured. Carries a solidish guard, effective switch stance fighter that fights behind a solid jab in solid combinations. Problem is sometimes it's low volume. He's a bit of a slow starter. Has good power, counters well, snappy backside kicks that he'll throw front, side, high, and low. Has a dangerous guard. So, again, he's a good fighter. You know, he really is. Technically, he's a good fighter. He has a good frame. He has good power. Footwork's pretty nice. I mean, there's a lot to like about. He's not the most skilled striker, but fundamentally he is pretty good. And you have to remember, especially in MMA, the styles always make matchups. If somebody brings up like, oh, Sean O'Malley beat Marlon Vera, yeah, he did. The thing is Sean O'Malley is longer than Marlon. He's also just that much more technical of a striker. He's also a little bit more of a counter sniper type striker, and so because of that, he also he's not a counter striker because he does put up more numbers, like he pumps out more output, higher output, but the thing is he's also able to counter really, really well, and so stylistically, Sean O'Malley's going to win that fight a lot of times. You know what I mean? Just because he's going to do more, because he's longer. And so, when I look at this fight, let's go to David Martinez real quick. All right, David Martinez. This guy's a very light-footed striker. He has good bounce, lots of movement, nice footwork, and maintains range well. Fights with a bladed stance and utilizes a kick-heavy attack. He has lightning fast kicks to all levels. He carries a high guard, more of a counter striker with his hands, but does have pretty clean boxing with fast hands. Seems to defensively wrestle and grapple at a pretty high level. And, it doesn't really say this in there, but kind of what he does is when he fights, or when his opponent is an individual or a fighter that has some grappling skills or takedown ability, typically what happens is, this guy is a guy that likes to operate in space, and he's really good at maintaining that space, and so he's usually able to keep the fight where he wants it. But hypothetically, in situations where his opponents, because in order for him to be offensive, he has to close the gap, right? He has to close the gap to strike. So enter and exiting the pocket. And what he does is, if he thinks his opponent is going to try to clinch them or engage in wrestling, usually what he does is he tries to beat them to the punch. And so he'll engage in the grappling or clinching, and he'll position himself to disengage and then go back to work. It's something that he does at a pretty high level, I've noticed, and it's kind of unique in some way, because I don't see people do it or utilize it the way that he does. And he's able to use this to, again, kind of dictate where the fight goes. And he's so good in space, so fast, so technical, and he defends so well, like takedowns and what have you. And he's got good pace, good volume. He's just going to be hard to beat. I think that he's so good, and he also has knockout ability. This guy can absolutely knock anyone out. So I think there's a real chance he knocks out Cheeto. But I don't think that's super likely. I think more than likely David probably wins a decision. But I'm not going to count him out for a knockout. But I also will acknowledge that Marlon Vera could knock out David Martinez as well. But I don't know. My money's on David. I really believe that this guy has medal potential. And I'll just keep preaching that. I think that it's like these are his coming out party. His last fight was against, it was a short notice replacement against Rob Font. And I talked to a lot of different people about this, even in this realm, telling people like, yo, this guy's the real deal. I heard a lot of people pick against him. And now they're all on the train. I hear everyone, all these people that talk, on YouTube and everything, they're going to be like, oh yeah, most of them are talking about David Martinez. Most of them. I think anyone that really knows what they're talking about is probably talking about David Martinez. But we'll see. Like I said, Marlon Vera, he's a good fighter. I think that I think his mentalities, it's kind of like Zellhuber. A lot of ability, a lot of skill. Mentality might be lacking just a bit, for you to win at the highest level. But ultimately, I think they're still really good fighters. Let's move on. We got the main event coming up next, and we have Brandon Moreno going against Kavanagh, and fun fight. It's an opportunity for Kavanagh to prove his worth or make a huge leap in the standings. Brandon Moreno is a tough customer, real tough, very experienced, very, very skilled. And just to be honest with you, I mean, it's hard for me not to favor Brandon Moreno in this fight. The way I look at this fight is it is volatile because Kavanagh has the ability to win. He also is a new breed of MMA fighter that he's very, very skilled. I mean, this guy is absolutely lightning in a bottle. The thing is, Moreno is extremely experienced. And he's good. Good, good, good. Let's hop into these breakdowns real quick and not ramble too much before we do so. Let's see, we got I know I'm not spelling that right. Hold on. Yeah, Moreno. Alright. Moreno. Light-footed counter striker. He uses footwork to skirt around the cage and pick his shots. He throws huge overhand right and left hook, and then he ends that combo with a kick. Body lock takedown. Scrappy scrambler. And he's a very sound grappler. And then on the other side, Kavanagh. Come on, Beto. This guy's a light-footed striker. Uses measured pressure with good movement and range management. Switch stance fighter. Nasty backside kicks from both legs. He is a diverse, explosive, fast, nice counters, quick hands, good head movement. Real question around his ground game. So, there's that. I mean, Moreno, I guess. I don't know. I guess he could get a submission on this guy, potentially. Let's look at some of that real quick. He does have 11 submission wins, never been submitted. And he's got some submissions against really, really high-level guys. The Tattoo of Tyra stoppage was a bit early, in my opinion. I didn't like that. Brandon Royval, split decision. Pantoja, split decision. Figgy lost the decision. Got a rear naked choke on Figgy, which is pretty impressive. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think he could get a submission. but he hasn't had a ton of them in recent past. I don't know if, I mean, it's been 5 years basically since he's had one. I don't know that it's super like you, but it's certainly possible. Certainly possible. And then when we look at Lonia, this guy, 4 knockouts, 1 sub win, 4 decision. He's a guy that really can win in any way. Got knocked out by Charles Johnson, but he was honestly kind of dominating that fight beforehand. And I wasn't mad to see Johnson. I mean, I was in the sense that I didn't really think, or I didn't want to see Lonia lose necessarily, but somebody's got to lose, and I like both those guys, but yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I guess I like Moreno's experience. I think it wins him the fight. So I'm not sure how you like to look at it. I think it's volatile because, like I said, I think Lonier has the ability to win the fight, but I think that Moreno does too, and he also has the experience to help him get across that finish line. So I'm gonna go with Brandon Moreno on this, but I'm not gonna be surprised if somehow Lonier is able to pull off the upset. But that's my projections for the fight. Best of luck to everyone. Let's run it. We're out.